Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Sometimes the owners of condos think they're entitled to not follow the laws. Well, the fire inspector in our first story thinks differently. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Be careful what you wish for. The fire inspector may cite you instead. So first, a bit of backstory. Several years ago, I inherited my mother's condo after my grandmother, her mother, passed. After my mother's death a few years later, I decided to rent it out. The condo's part of a complex that's roughly 50 years old. Think garden courtyard style with two-story buildings built around an open courtyard with parking outside. It's pretty nice, particularly when the HOA keeps up the maintenance and landscaping. The units are owned by a combination of individual residents, absentee owners like myself, and one company that owns the bulk of the units. The company changes hands from time to time, but effectively controls the complex because they own so many units. Generally, they choose a good management company, and right now the property manager is very proactive and looks out for the residents, owners, and tenants alike. With that out of the way, being roughly 50 years old, it's time to pave the parking lots again. The management company hires a paving company and sets up a plan to pave each lot in turn and make sure all the residents are notified well in advance so they can move their cars. An annoying process, but paving always is, and the lots are in dire need of being paved. And again, the management company is over-communicating, trying to make sure everyone moves their car, no one gets towed, and the paving stays on schedule. Well, someone apparently isn't too happy about all this, so they decide to call the fire department and report the paving for blocking access in the event of a fire. Judging by correspondence from the management company, they never bothered to speak with the on-site manager and address the issue. Of course, the fire department sends out an inspector. The inspector checks out the property and sees it matches with what was already submitted to avoid any issues, and everything's good to go. Except, city ordinance prohibits grills, fire pits, tiki torches, and other open flames on condo/apartment balconies. And of course, lots and lots of units have one or all of the above. So the fire inspector kindly tells the property manager and gives the residents a chance to remove the violating items, and that he'll be back to cite anyone who still has one. So be careful what you wish for. You just might get it. And our second story. Entitled people in jail. Background. I spent 10 years serving as a custodial corrections officer in a male high-security prison in Australia. The prison was classified as high security, but also contained residential quarters, medium security, and low security, the prison farm. Now, your common EP is usually a first-time prisoner when they reach us, fresh from the courts, and still full of their entitled rights. They're mostly in their early 20s, come from a mostly good background, have money or parents with money, and an ego like a rock star. They're also all utterly bewildered as to how this could have happened to them. They arrive in a complete state of denial, sure that this is all a mistake and they'll be on the streets again in a few hours. The first shock comes when they're processed in. All their clothing and possessions are taken to be stored until released. They're strip searched, showered with lice wash, yes really, photographed and issued prison clothing, a bed pack and hygiene kit, prison ID card, and after a medical and psych check, delivered to the reception unit. At some point during this process, they'll try to lay down the law to us. You can't make me do that. / take my things away. / make me strip. / shower, etc. And the famous, I know my rights. Newsflash, youngin', this is Australia, not the USA. Don't believe everything you see on TV. And this is where they receive the very first big shock of their entire lives. Yes, we most certainly can make you do all these things. The only difference is whether you do it voluntarily or whether 3 big officers do it to you. No, sweetie, it's not against your rights. In fact, I can show you the exact legislation where we can compel you to obey if you like. The vast majority of them crumple by now. If you choose to fight, they all lose. I suppose the thing that annoys me the most is that these kids have been allowed to get this far in life before they realize that the world does not jump to their will. It's plain that Mommy and Daddy never once used the word no to these entitled little craps, and now someone has been hurt and EP Kitty is in jail. As a 3-year-old, it may have been tolerable, even cute, I suppose, when they threw a tantrum because they didn't get their way. But as an adult, it's not, especially when he wanted someone else's property, for example. This, parents out there, is why each and every child must learn that no means no, and they have to respect that. The other prisoners, the real hardened lifers, absolutely hated these spoiled little EPs. They described them as plastic prisoners. Obviously, it was far from uncommon for an EP to try to throw his weight around and receive a few slaps for it. The smart ones learned quickly. The really entitled ones usually did not. A little bit of advice, kiddies. Do not ever threaten to take legal action against criminals involved with the organized crime rings. It'll considerably complicate your remaining time on this planet. So in the end, some of them learn they are not the center of the universe and there are consequences for their actions. The thing that annoys me the most is that it's entirely preventable if they'd been raised as children to understand the rights of others and their own responsibilities in society. They would never have seen the inside of a cell. As officers, we frequently acted as mentors for a lot of the prisoners we felt had a chance at becoming good citizens. I never minded doing this. In fact, I'm damn proud of the ones I helped to never reoffend. I guess I just found it infuriating that I was having to teach basic lessons and manners that parents should have taught at the age of 3. And our last story. Entitled mother tries to make my sister-in-law's life miserable in order to get a house. Recently, my mother-in-law passed away. My wife's sister, Lucy, 40s, female, has a mental handicap where she has the mentality and maturity of about a 9-year-old. She's lived with her mother her entire life and was understandably devastated by the loss. Because of her handicap, Lucy receives a Social Security disability check every month from the government in the amount of about $800. She and my mother-in-law have been renting an apartment using both of their incomes. However, with the loss of my mother-in-law's income, Lucy could no longer afford the apartment on her own. My mother-in-law and Lucy have a small dog, a Chihuahua, Maria, that they've had since it was born. Maria is now 12 years old. Lucy loves this little dog, and it really is the only thing she has left of her mother. My mother-in-law had taken care of Lucy for her whole life to the point that Lucy never had to cook, clean, go grocery shopping, pay bills, make a budget, or do anything for herself. My mother-in-law's passing was not a surprise. She'd been sick for a while. Therefore, for the past year or so, Lucy's been receiving services from a state-sponsored program to help her learn life skills such as cooking and cleaning. The program also offers housing assistance, but it was not needed before this time. How the housing assistance works is that the GP buys or rents housing, then places clients in the house, charging the clients significantly reduced rent, with the state welfare program making up the difference. After my mother-in-law's death, my wife became Lucy's power of attorney, allowing her to make financial and medical decisions for Lucy. My wife was able to get Lucy set up in GP housing at a cost to Lucy of $500 per month. This included all utilities, leaving Lucy $300 per month for internet, food, and anything else she needed. It's not ideal, but it's doable. However, she'd be unable to keep the dog. The reason for this is EM, whom we'll call Karen because, of course. Also living in the same GP housing as Lucy is Dottie, 20s, female. Dottie's also handicapped. She's nonverbal and walks with a walker. However, she seems very sweet. Unlike her mother, Karen, Dottie requires 24/7 support from caregivers. Lucy also has caregivers coming weekdays during the day to help her. Maria ended up staying with one of her caregivers, Sophie, until a situation could be arranged where she and Lucy could live together. When my wife met with the GP representative and Karen to discuss Lucy moving into the house, Karen told everyone that dogs were not allowed because the landlord forbade it. The landlord she was referring to was not the GP, but the owner of the house that the GP was renting from. My wife asked if she could discuss this with the landlord directly, and Karen said, "No, I'm representing the landlord, so you'll just have to trust me." It gets worse. Even though Lucy is technically renting from the GP, Karen insisted that my wife sign a sublease stating that we were renting from Karen. The representative from the GP said to go ahead and sign it and that it'd be fine. My guess is that since Karen is paying the GP, the document would be unenforceable, and the GP rep just didn't want to deal with fighting Karen. So my wife signed it. Karen also wanted Lucy to pay the $500 monthly to her, and she would give it to GP. My wife stood her ground on that one. There was no way that we were trusting this person with Lucy's money. After much arguing, Karen finally agreed to let us pay the rent directly to the GP. Then the discussion went back to the dog. My wife asked if there was any way that Maria could live with Lucy. Karen said, of course not. My husband's allergic to dogs. My wife said, so that means if your husband came to see Dottie, he'd have a problem, right? Karen replied, no, my husband never comes to the house, but I do all the time, and I can't be bringing dog dander home. Later, when my wife and I were at the house to sign the sublease, Karen mentioned that she had to leave to pick up her daughter's dog. What? Karen also tried to get security cameras installed in the house. They would cover the living room, the kitchen, and the dining room, basically all of the common areas, because Dottie was nonverbal and couldn't tell Karen what was happening with her. She wanted to be able to observe what was going on in the house at any time. Nobody was okay with this. Not Lucy, not my wife, not the caregivers, and not the GP representative. Some of Dottie's caregivers told us that Karen had asked for this on multiple occasions. She didn't like being told no. So Lucy moved in without the dog. Sophie would drive her over to her house nearly every day to spend time with Maria. Every time Karen came to the house when Lucy was there, she told Lucy that she just forgot about the dog because she's never going to have Maria with her again. Everything having to do with Karen was starting to look a little fishy. Using public records search, I was able to determine that the owner of the house was an 80-year-old woman who inherited the house from her parents when they died. Using the same search, I was able to learn that Karen owned 3 different properties that she rented out. I kind of got the impression that Karen was trying to somehow get the house from the owner, but we never figured out what that dynamic was all about. After living there 3 months, my wife received a letter from the owner of the house. It was an eviction notice. Apparently, the owner had decided to sell the house, and Lucy had 30 days to move out. The letter also stated that Karen has decided not to renew the lease. My wife called Karen, and as it turns out, Karen got a similar letter from the owner stating that Lucy had decided not to renew the lease. I couldn't help but laugh. It seems that whatever Karen was trying to pull on the owner got the last laugh. A few weeks later, Lucy moved into another GP house. This one's more expensive, $600 per month, but it includes internet, which Lucy no longer has to pay for. So it's pretty much a wash. Also, another resident in the house has a dog, so after making sure that Maria and the other dog got along, Lucy has her dog back. I will never understand small-minded people and their desire for power over anyone and everyone. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.